Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Community Forum. My name is Joseph Feaster and I am the host of the program. And this evening I have the pleasure of having the four candidates for the selectmen here with me this evening to let you know why you should vote for them and to give you some information on some of the issues of concern to them. Now the format for the program will be as follows. There will be an opportunity for each candidate in order to give a 2-minute opening statement. Thereafter, I will ask questions of each of the candidates to which they will have 2 minutes to respond to. At the end of that period, they will then have an opportunity to have a closing statement, and then we will bid you good night. So at this particular point in time, I just want to give a brief introduction of each of the candidates. And so I'm going to start with Ms. Walsh. Ms. Walsh is a 3-term member of the Board of Selectmen. She is running for her 4th term. As you know, Ms. Walsh, she is an icon in this community, has been a teacher in our public school system, and at one point in time chaired the Municipal Operations Committee. To her left is Mr. Bob O'Regan, who is a member of the Board of Selectmen. I believe this would be running for his 3rd term as a member of the Board of Selectmen. He is an attorney. He has been involved on the planning board in Stoughton. I believe he may have been chaired the planning board at one particular point in time, Mr. O'Regan. Next to Mr. O'Regan and to his left is Mr. Peter Brown. Mr. Brown has served as a member of the town meeting for many, many years. He has lived in Stoughton for more than 20 years. And I believe that he has served on the Finance Committee for a number of years as well. And next to me, a person needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyway. Mr. Robert Cohn, who has been served on as a town meeting representative for 37 years, has served on the Finance Committee for 9 years and 2 years as its vice chair. So welcome all of the candidates. We will have an interesting time to have a conversation to let you know, to let the voters know exactly where you stand on particular issues. But before we start, as I promised, each of you will have a 2-minute opening statement, and I will start with you, Ms. Walsh.
My name is Cynthia Walsh. I live at 1096 Park Street. I came to Stoughton in 1948 with my parents, the late Patrick and Evelyn Walsh. I'm the oldest of 6. My younger siblings are Susan, David, Deborah, Patrick, and John. 3 of my 5 siblings continue to live in the town of Stoughton. I went to the Tolman School, the Jones School, the South School, the West School, the junior high school, and I graduated from Stoughton High. I won a scholarship that paid my first year's tuition at Bridgewater State College. My dad was so thrilled to have someone going to college in the family that he paid for the last 3 years. The princely sum of $600 for all 3 years. Those were the good old days we remember. I started working at the Edwin A. Jones School in 1969. I have worked for the town of Stoughton in some capacity as an employee or a volunteer since that date. So that's 46 years. And some people might think, well, Cynthia, why don't you just lean back and relax? Well, I got a second wind. Many of you know I'm in remission from cancer. I don't think God would have given me a second chance if he wanted me to just sit at home and bide my time. So I'd like to continue serving you in the capacity as a member of the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Mr. O'Regan.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having us here and for this opportunity. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob O'Regan, and I'm here to ask you for one of your votes to return to my second term. I was promoted a bit earlier to my second term on the Board of Selectmen. Carol and I moved to Stoughton about 30 years ago. We raised our children in Stoughton. Both of them attended and graduated from Stoughton Public Schools. I've served on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think, if I'm right, I've been a town meeting member for about 15 years. And I ran for the Board of Selectmen for the first time 3 years ago because I believed then, and I still believe now, that we can do a better job than we have been doing in improving our town. To many of us, the town was on a downward spiral, and we seemed unable to turn that around. Over the past 3 years, we've been working hard, and I've been working hard with the team to turn things around. This election is really about electing people who will lead your team in your government to operate our town. It's a $100 million operation. So tonight, I'd like to ask you to listen to us and evaluate each of us on how you can rely on each of us to understand the issues that face the town and face the Board of Selectmen, to get the information we need, to be able to tell the difference between accurate and reliable information that's good to make decisions, and inaccurate information and rumor that should not form the basis of public decisions, and to make good decisions on the basis that it's good for the town. That's what I've tried to do for the past 3 years, focusing on better management, economic development, improving the way we budget, and revitalizing the downtown. So I hope that you would please give me your consideration. And I, again, thank you for the opportunity to be here, Mr. Feaster.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Regan. And okay, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. My name is Peter Brown, and I want to thank you for the wonderful introduction, and thank you for having us here. And I want to wish my colleagues well, and also thank them for their dedicated service over the years. I presently serve on the Finance Committee, and I am a member of town meeting. I bought my house here in Stoughton after I met my wife, who is a lifelong resident of Stoughton. We purchased a home that we live in today in December of 1994. I have a daughter who is a freshman at Stoughton High School. I'm proud to say she's doing very well and plays on the soccer team. I am a former lieutenant with the Massachusetts Department of Correction, where I retired after 20 years of service a few years back. I graduated from Northeastern University with a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice. I've been recently spending my time, free time if you will, acting as a spokesperson for my 2 nephews who were injured at the marathon at the second explosion. And I am running for several reasons, but the primary reason is to bring fiscal responsibility. I've had many conversations with different folks, and although we seem to be making strides and making steps in a positive direction, some people are concerned and have expressed their worries that maybe we're growing too big too fast. I'm not a politician, I'm just a member of the community, and tonight and beyond we'll have discussions, and I'm certain even some disagreement, but in the end this is something that we are working together, and I asked that you consider me as one of your votes. I like to think I'm a strong voice and a solid choice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Cohn.
Thank you, Mr. Feaster. Thank you for having us, and thank for cable TV for having us too. My name is Robert Cohn. I'm probably the senior of this whole group. Just retired a year ago. Lived in this town 42 years. Bought the house 42 years ago and live in the house I live 42 years. I'm married to my wife Diane for 45 years, very happily, thank God. I have 2 children that graduated the Stoughton school system, have now been very successful businessmen around the country. I've served on the Finance Committee for 37 years. I am the current chairman of the municipal regulations, and I served on other things too, Little League, Babe Ruth I've worked with, different groups in this town I work with. I am also a past president of the Avatora Temple in Stoughton and have now co-chaired the membership committee. The Avatora has now this year got himself fiscal responsible back into operation, and the temple will be here for a long time. And I'm proud of that, and I'm thank the people of the temple for doing this too. I'm running for the Board of Selectmen because, and I'm going to be truthful with you because you know me, I'm a very frank person, and I say it the way it is. Made a call to town hall one day over a problem and was treated very rudely. In the process of that, I had to go to the police station, and I found out that an employee of 42 years had to reapply for a job. And that's not the way we treat the people of the town of Stoughton. I very nicely proceeded up to the town hall and pulled my papers. And as far as the budget goes, the budget is over bloated. I served on the finance committee, and positions are showing up at a rapid pace.
I want to thank each of you for your opening statements, and I'm going to make one change because I had said I was going to start my first question with Ms. Walsh, but I always try to follow what my producer tells me, just like my wife. So therefore, I am going to ask the first question of you, Mr. O'Regan. You now, and you have corrected the fact that you are running for your second term. You would there.
I'll take a third term if you'll give me the second.
No, I'm going to try my best to see if we can do that. But in any event, I wanted to talk about the role of the selectmen. I would like you served as a selectman for one term. I want to get in terms of your role. I'm the only one with no time. I have no time, only for them. So can you tell us what you see as the role of the selectmen?
Well, within the institution, the analogy I give is to the board of directors of a business, where the chief executive, chief operating officer is the town manager. So the Board of Selectmen in Stoughton is a policy board on the one hand, but more than that, it's a leadership board in that there are many boards and committees that are appointed by the Board of Selectmen or who look to the Board of Selectmen for leadership and direction apart from through the town manager's office. A perfect example I can give for that is the way the Redevelopment Authority was tasked by the Board of Selectmen in a proposal I made before I got on the board to redevelop the downtown. So the Redevelopment Authority is a separate board, can be charged and was charged by statute with doing the downtown redevelopment by the Board of Selectmen. And so those boards have to work together to get it right. It's also, the Board of Selectmen is also an education tool within the community. We have a responsibility on the Board of Selectmen to make sure that the community is educated on the issues, and we have a responsibility to the townspeople to educate ourselves, so that when we are asked to make decisions or make appointments, we have a good understanding of what the real facts are, what the implications of the decision may be, and then go about making a decision not based on rumor, innuendo, or suspicion, but on what's in the best interest, near-term and long-term, for the community. That's what I see as the role of the Board of Selectmen. Different, and it's more than just what the charter says, which is not very explanatory for how things work.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown, same question for you. What do you see as the role of the Board of Selectmen?
Well, to echo Mr. O'Regan's points, I absolutely agree that clear and decisive leadership and professional leadership is very necessary of the elected leaders, given the fact that they are the highest authority in the town. I believe that proper oversight and prudent oversight is something that comes from being involved, communication, setting budgets of this magnitude are a huge responsibility, making certain the proper services and resources are being used accordingly. It encompasses just more than, as Mr. O'Regan said, that innuendo and accusations and charges and rumors. It really takes a lot of effort, and I commend both the people to my right who have, dedicated their time and service to the public. So I do see it as something that's very important and vital in the next few years because of so many challenges that are confronting us in the way of new buildings and growth.
Thank you much. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Cohn, same question. What do you see as the role of the Board of Selectmen?
Leadership is very important, but also it's to work together. And I mean work together is, you work as a five-man board. You work as a five-man board. You have a chairman, and you have four other selectmen. You all should be telling the chairman of this committee what to do. It's up to you people to represent the town. Another question I have is South Coastal Rail. Real good leadership we had on that one. We went there, and the town of Stoughton has got absolutely nothing from the South Coastal Rail. Nothing. We want to suppress that, but that again is going to be strong leadership. Downtown is another one. We already had one study, and we're having a second study. And by the way, folks, as far as the redevelopment goes, you have to go to the planning board for the final approval. That's fact. And the only thing that bothered me on that, there was not one member of the planning board put on that committee. It bothers me. Strong leadership is to direct the town manager to the right way to do too. There's certain appointments that have to be made, and they should be looked very carefully. And the most important thing is to listen to you, the public. You elect us, you tell us how we're doing, and you should tell us how we're not doing things right either. So it's up to you to pick any one of us to do something, but the leadership is there. The trouble is, in my opinion, sometimes the leadership goes off track here. The last meeting we had, there was a gentleman trying to apply for something, and he was diverted again. And that's a pattern that happens in this town too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohn. Ms. Walsh, the role of the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I know it's called the Board of Selectmen, but it's actually a five-person board. And if you think it's a five-man board, then I've already lost. The board is supposed to lead, but I would be very suspicious of a Board of Selectmen where everyone agreed. The whole idea of having five is so that we can hear more than one opinion of what should be happening. I think we want a variety of opinions. We want decisions made as a consensus if that's possible. But some people have a huge difference in where they think the town is going. And so I think all of the views of the different parts of Stoughton should be represented. And part of the problem we're having, as a previous speaker mentioned, is a decision couldn't be made on an important subject because we didn't have a full board. People sincerely run for the Board of Selectmen. They believe they can serve. What happens is things interfere. They arrive late. They leave early. They don't come at all. This makes it very hard to have any sense of continuity. People, sometimes we have to rediscuss things because people weren't present when the presentation was made. If you're not there for the presentation, it's very hard to make a decision on something. So we do need better attendance, and maybe that's the teacher in me saying that. When you run for the board, many people think, well, I can make those 2 monthly meetings, but actually we meet more often than that. So I think it's important that people have the time to invest. I spend 5 to 10 hours at Town Hall just about every week, and that excludes the time I spend for meetings. To represent you properly takes time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Walsh. Thank all of you. The next question is going to come to you, Mr. Brown. The budget. Budget is a planning document. The budget process starts within the town government, comes over to the selectmen, ultimately to the town meeting. Talk to me about your thoughts about budget development, budget process, budget implementation.
Well, I think the current process that we have really seemed to work this year with the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee sitting together and hearing the department heads come before them and explain their needs. You know, it's a $100 million budget. It's very large. It's not one person's decision or one person can drive this bus. I believe it is a collective effort and certainly need to be vetted and determine what best goes in what area. One of the concerns I have with a budget of this size is that, and we discussed it last night at one of our FinCom meetings, was a lot of things aren't included in the budget. For example, in operating costs. We seem to always have to stray outside the actual budget itself when we're looking for anything that maybe be considered capital outlay or even a little bit wishful thinking. For example, last year, one of the things that I found little troubling to me was there was a warrant article requested, and I think it was $10,000 to reseed the West Field. And I could never come to grips of why we'd have to look at going outside the actual budget when it should already be built in. I mean, we're talking $100 million inside of a budget, and I think that to have to go outside and start requesting 10,000 here and 50,000 here, 60,000 there, it just kind of loses sight of where we're actually going. And I know there are issues and things that would be needed, or you come across or in the planning stages, but I think we have to do a little bit better job at coming to an understanding of where we're at and planning year in and year out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Cohn, same question on what do you see looking at the development, implementation of an approval of a budget?
Well, the budget starts with, and this budget starts right after town meeting, probably September. Department heads put this together. They turn their estimates into, and their numbers into the town manager. Town manager refines them. They go back. They settle what they're going to use. But there's other things involved in this too. State aid, school reimbursements. So when you really don't have a full budget, you can vote a budget, but when the state reimburses these towns, and it's a lot of money, it helps defer the cost of a lot of this. And we might have to go to town meeting this year. There's a shortage of $150 billion in the state government. He says he's not going to cut state aid. I hope he does not do this, because it will make the process through. We go to town meeting, we usually get, it's called a cherry sheet, and the cherry sheet's the one that tells us what we're going to have to do. If it comes in early, they can readjust. If they don't, we go to town meeting and do this, we might have to come back. What I find is the process that finally come back this year, the department heads finally come back to present their budget. They turned it in last year, and the town manager presented the budget. And to be truthful with you, I'd rather talk to the department heads because some of the questions couldn't be answered. This year here, I have no budget. I'm running for the office of selectman, and it's lucky I picked one up a week ago, but no one has offered me a budget or anything. And as I said, it's so important that people run for town meeting member too, because this is part of the budget process too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohn. Ms. Walsh, same question, the development,
You don't need to repeat
implementation
the
of the budget.
question. I heard you the second time.
Well,
I'm old, but I still can function. It's important to remember that the Board of Selectmen only controls 1/3 of the budget. 2/3 of the budget go to the school department. We do see their budget. Past boards have actually voted to cut the budget. But that opportunity is ultimately town meeting. Town meeting makes the financial decisions. They decide whether to buy a pickup truck, they decide whether to fund reseeding, they decide how much money goes to the school department, because that's a lump sum, and then they go article by article and make those decisions. It's important to remember that not everything can come out of the budget. Probably many of you have purchased a home or a new car. You go into debt to do those things. So for the town to have to borrow money is not unusual. The debt limit for Stoughton is $162 million, and our outstanding debt now, and I've seen several different figures, they vary from 32 to 36 million. depending on which figures and how recent they are. We're nowhere near our borrowing limit. I think that people raise that issue year after year to scare us, to think our town's going to go bankrupt. Something to remember that I would like to remember, I thought the budget process this year was truncated between the weather and the injuries to our chairman. We couldn't put as much effort into it as I would have liked to, and I think other members of the committee. So that bothers me. The fact is there's enough money for everything, but this selectman, as a single woman who owns her own home, knows just because you have it doesn't mean you spend it. I'm also a town meeting representative. You do see me stand on certain things, and I'm hoping that there'll be less spending than maxing it out.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Thank you very much. I know the teacher in you, that you heard the timer. But in any
What?
event, but Ms. O'Regan, the question to you on the budget.
So the three speakers before me have each answered the same question in a different way, and my sense is some answered more than the question you asked. So let me break it up first quickly into the budget and the budget process. I think what we need to do on the Board of Selectmen, and I've tried to do this, is at the beginning of the budget cycle, give the town manager direction as a policy issue, a function of the Board of Selectmen, on the budget guidelines for framing the budget. I'm a fan, until something drastically changes, in directing the town manager to prepare level service budgets. No changes in personnel, no changes in services, without an exception that are presented to the Board of Selectmen for consideration and review prior to inclusion in the budget. Why? Because we only have so much money to go around, and we cannot just allow the budget to grow without that kind of scrutiny. I'm a fan of that. The problem we've got two problems on the budget. One is that a lot of our costs are beyond our control. Yes, we can control debt service costs because we vote to borrow, and this year's debt service comes out of this year's budget. But so many expenses we have to pay are expenses related to insurance, expenses related to fixed costs for operations that are beyond our control, and contractual obligations to employees and others. So the amount that we have on a discretionary basis year to year to adjust the budget is not that great. It's at the policy level that the selectmen determine where that goes. And finally, the system. Our system on the budget is lousy. We're asked under our town charter to submit a budget for town meeting before the state revenue is available to the town is announced by the governor, by about 2 weeks, unlike almost every other community in the state. So that the Board of Selectmen sends to FinCom way
O'Regan,
before we know what our state revenue is.
Thank you very much for your response.
And that has to change, right? Right.
Mr. Cohn, the next question will begin with you. We talk about Stoughton, and many will say that we have missed the boat on our economic development. We have had the plans which you referred to previously. We've had several different studies and plans that have been done. We've talked about the sewer betterment as a means in which to deal with the economic development. We've talked about the development of the downtown, both with regards to the Stoughton Depot as well as possibly moving the post office. All of these things are being discussed. What's your thoughts as to how we can make Stoughton a destination? Well, the State Theater is another piece, but how can we make Stoughton a centerpiece, a piece of destination?
Stoughton Center, in my opinion, before you do anything, you've got to straighten the traffic out. Anyone I drove through here, it's just like riding through the Indy Speedway and hope if you come out of Wyman Street, you'll come out without getting killed. That's number one. No one is going to come to this town without just driving into this place. Second of all, we need a parking garage. We have several locations. We talk about it, we talk about it, we talk about it. Nothing happens. And the third thing, as I said before, the Chamber of Commerce is a very important part of this because they specialize in small business. We're not going to put a Target in the middle of Stoughton Center. Small stores. I heard a couple of days ago, I met a gentleman, and we're talking about moving roads, taking everything out. I can't believe this. One person, and it was brought up, the moderator brought up, to take the whole town and move it back past the railroad station. And think about it. If you move that back, you can do whatever you want with the road. We have green area. Green is fine. Parking's important. Downtown, we've been playing with this now 20 years? 20 years, maybe more. But whatever it is, we don't do nothing. We have reports. We just had a report in the downtown. Now we have the redevelopment authority. Again, as I told you, the redevelopment authority can't do anything without the planning board's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohn. Ms. Walsh, the question to you as well about the economic development. I mentioned several things, the sewer betterment, talked about the State Theater, talked about the downtown planning. We talked about a number of areas. What do you think should be just as far as economic development for Stoughton?
Well, we already, we have hired an economic development person. She's formed a downtown Stoughton economic development group that I'm part of, and we've already met twice. We're breaking up into smaller groups. As far as the sewer betterment, I was appointed to the steering committee that's working with the town engineer, and we're trying to come up with a build-out plan for the sewers and a better option for betterment than having both sides of the street pay 50%. That's really stalled our sewer development because people can't afford that. As to the square, there's not much you can do with the square. The town of Stoughton doesn't own the square. We are the street commissioners. We can do things about the streets, and that's there's a public hearing on that proposal for some temporary ideas, putting them into practice in the square. That hearing is going to be on March 24th. It's going to be 7 p.m. at Town Hall. But there's really no real solution for the fact that there's 3 state highways going through the square. As a previous speaker mentioned, right, there's not going to be a big box store in the square. It is going to have to be smaller stores. We've been talking about the square since the 50s. That's when the supermarkets moved out of the square. So it's been a very, very long haul. But what I haven't seen in any of the proposals were the owners of those buildings. I have seen the people that rent in those buildings, but we have to somehow get the owners invested in fixing up the square, because the people that own the buildings are the people that control the way the square looks. The town doesn't have a sign ordinance, for instance. Town meeting won't pass one where we would have equal facades. A lot of people would like to see that, at least make it prettier.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Mr. Regan.
The important thing about economic development is that it broadens and deepens the tax base to take and relieve the burden of the tax rate off the residents. That's why, one reason, getting economic development up and running is critical. And the second reason is because of what that does to the quality and character of life in the community. I'm not so sure I agree that we should be doing economic development in a way to attract other people to the community as a destination for others. How will we know what other people want? We should decide what we want our town to be. I think we can do that if you've attended some of these public sessions. Pretty clear that there's a sense of what this community wants itself to be, and then go about doing it. We've missed the boat on the opportunities for economic development because we haven't had the leadership at the Board of Selectmen to push it through. That's one of the responsibilities of a board of directors of the community, which is a way to see the Board of Selectmen to do, and to make sure we've got the talent in staff and we apply the resources of our volunteers on the boards and committees to get it done. I've been doing that in my first 3 years on the Board of Selectmen. I go to these meetings, I attend these meetings, I'm on the Master Planning Committee. One of the previous speakers mentioned traffic, the perfect example of the leadership issue. The various folks merging on the downtown, trying to get the downtown going, we're all complaining about the traffic wouldn't work. yet there was no one taking the lead to make sure we had a new engineered layout for traffic. So the board went along with my request. We inserted a warrant article, and we will have an engineering study on the traffic coming in at the same time as we're having a development scheme. That's a responsibility of the town. On parking, we have and present to the MBTA a partnership proposal that was developed through the town manager for partnering with the MBTA, with commuter rail, whether or not South Coast Rail goes through. And that includes a parking garage. So we're working on these things all to get us where we need to go the right way.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown?
Well, a lot of good points have been made. The downtown is obviously a focus of most people that are either sitting on the board or looking to get on the board. But I have a different perspective on downtown because I'm not really certain the course of action. Everybody realizes the traffic is a problem. I think that if we could extend a hand to our elected leaders, our state officials and the governor, and maybe see if we could get them to understand our needs, and they're looking to bring in South Coast Rail. We have some other issues downtown that maybe we could invite the elected officials to find out that we're really suffering in the way of downtown growth. But one of the things that was brought up at that meeting that we had just recently in last month about the development of downtown is that I'm not certain what our end results are, what the goals are. I'm not certain how the cost or the results of the benefit to the town itself. They used, I think, 8 communities, all of different areas, but similar in population and resources and economic in way people earn. And I'm trying to research now and find out how they benefited from their development of what they call their downtown. So although there's plenty of problems and although there's a big need there, I think Ms. Walsh makes a valid point about the business owners down there. They have a responsibility not only to themselves, but to the town and the community that they serve. And under this, and I'm not pointing fingers, but this downtown just didn't happen overnight. This has been happening for quite some time, and we've been talking about it. I think it's time to actually make a commitment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. I'm probably coming to the last round of questions at this point in time. I know as time is clicking away, just wanted to emphasize that there's so much that I would like to ask of you: charter and town reform, working relationships up and down Pearl Street, but that's not going to allow time.
Do a lightning round.
That.
We'll do a lightning round.
But what I do want to talk about, and the question I'm going to pose to you, starting with you, Ms. Walsh, is we talked about the budget, we talked about economic development. There's some big ticket items that are being discussed in towns as far as needs that the town has. One is Stoughton High School. Whether we have a fire station or a public safety building is up for discussion. So there are a number of things that we are looking to do, and the question is how we can pay for it. Ms. Walsh, I want to say to you, what are your thoughts about the high school and the fire station or new fire station or new public safety building?
The thing that many people find difficult is how long everything takes. This is government work. Nothing will happen tomorrow. Because of the high school, we are partnering with the state. The state has become very, very cautious about school spending and spending on new buildings. So what is happening is that they've pretty much hijacked or shanghaied what the town would usually do. For instance, even forming a committee. In the past, we simply advertised, folks came forward. The state actually has a prescriptive list. They want an engineer, they want an architect. So the regular folks, as we like to call ourselves, aren't really being admitted as part of the process. The other issue is the feasibility study. It's 22 months long. That's almost 2 years. And to get the operations manager to run it, we had to submit lists to the state, and they picked the person that they thought would be the best program director. And until we selected that person and the state agreed on that person, we couldn't even start the process. Now, the good news is town meeting had already passed the money to pay the cost of a feasibility study. So that group has started their work. But 22 months from when they started, a couple of months ago, we'll get their opinion. Do we add to the school? Do we knock it down and build a whole new one? Those are the options right now. We either renovate what we've got and add to it, or we knock down the whole thing and rebuild. And I don't have time to get to the police and fire. Sorry, police and fire.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh. Mr. O'Regan.
I heard your question to be, how do we pay for these things?
That's correct.
So I'll answer that question.
All right.
We pay for them by looking ahead to understand what it is we need to do. In business, we look at revenue targets, and then, oddly enough, if you look at a revenue target, somehow, many times, you're able to develop the revenue you need to meet the target. We haven't done that. We ought to do that. Now, what have we been doing in the meantime? Because these projects are coming down the pike. I should add that there's no excuse for Station 1, Fire Station 1, to exist today. That building should have been remedied 20 or 30 years ago. To have those firefighters working in those conditions is abominable. So it's not an option to replace that building. Well, there's three ways to approach it. One is our operating budget, to make sure we stay lean on our operating budget so that every dollar of growth that we can sequester for building is put aside. We know from past experience that we tend to consume every tax dollar we can find, which leaves nothing for building. We need to sequester the money. And we're doing that because in my first year we began, and town meeting has still funded, a building fund. So we're starting to save up like you do for your house. And what I mean by sequestering is this, and it ties into economic development. There's no good reason why we can't have sustainable, good, long-term development in this town. I'm a fan of, and the Board of Selectmen can do this as a policy. Take literally a pen to a map in areas we want to develop. To me, North Stoughton is a prime example. And draw a red circle around areas of town where we want economic development. And reserve the new growth revenue from those areas for these projects. I would rather have us focus our energy on developing expedited permitting to get these businesses located and build our tax base than having a destructive discussion on 2.5 overrides and debt exclusion, which delays further way overdue projects we need to meet.
Thank you so much for your answer, Mr. O'Regan. Mr. Brown.
Well, contrary to the fact that you don't want to discuss about overrides or debt exclusion, that's the reality of this. And the challenges that face the town is, we're looking at 3, 4 buildings, new buildings, a library that has already been approved, new high school, which I don't think anyone will argue that we could use a new high school, and whether that's a brand new building or whether it's renovations, you're looking at a lot of money. Now, earlier it was mentioned that we have a cap of $162 million in borrowing capacity. If we're at 32, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that there's not much room in the event if you get a brand new high school of $120 million or what have you. So I think with the exception of options of override or debt exclusion, you have to look at bringing additional revenue to this town. And the way to get additional revenue and help to bring these new endeavors of buildings is to promote economic growth. And the economic growth has to be something similar to the Amazon project. We have to encourage these businesses to come here, and whether it be in the technology field or health technology, we have to get businesses to want to come here. And that would be by being business friendly and providing incentives. And right now, I don't see that incentive for businesses to come here. In fact, it's tough in Massachusetts, as we know the tax rates. Businesses are already a little standoffish. So I don't think we're going to be able to ask people just in town, the taxpayers, to be able to fund several new buildings. There are going to have to be other options, and whether that means debt exclusion or override.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Cohn.
I'm going to start with the library. The library's getting very close to being built. We don't have to borrow. as Ms. Walsh says, the borrowing power of this town is, everything is almost paid off. There's money to borrow the $7 million to do that. And it can be done. We definitely need a library. Getting back to the schools, the process that the state put on us is terrible. You have people up there that don't understand building, no less putting this thing together. You can't read, if they're telling us not to knock down that building, we're crazy. It's an old building. Part of that is very old. And you wait and see what we get for that. They'll be extraing you to death. 50 years in the building business, I understand. That's a heaven to get a fortune. The building should be knocked down and put back up. But we got to understand also, when my kids graduated, the graduating classes were 500 and 600. We don't have that anymore. I don't know if we're ever going to go back to that. We ought to look at the size. And we ought to put the whole key to the high school in making this work is called the clerk of works. Without the right clerk of works, this building is going to be awful. And the proper people that are in the field with their hands to guide this building through. As far as the firehouse, I agree with Mr. O'Regan. This place should have been, it should be condemned. That's what it is. We did a revitalization or a cleanup on it that turned to be a disaster. A disaster. Believe me, I'm over there once a week looking at what's going on. And the final thing is, who's going to pay for this, folks? You are. And your tax rates are going to go up $1,200 to $1,300 to pay for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. And as I said at the outset, you have an opportunity for closing statement. Time is ticking away, so I'm going to have you go right into it. We're going to go right to you, Mr. Cohn, to you, Mr. Brown, Mr. Regan, and then Ms. Walsh. Mr. Cohn.
A lot of people know me in this town, been around a long time. You know why I'm running. We've all expressed our points here. We all have different opinions. If I'm elected, people at Town Hall are going to be held accountable for. This is one thing that this isn't happening. When things, a fire station, override, $15,000, we took it out of an article because the state said we could. The rules are we go to town meeting. Wasn't done. Secrecy. You won't have any secrecy with me. I'd like to hold as many public meetings as I can, but I'm going to ask a lot of questions up there. And you bet your life we'll get down to some of this. Leadership, I am leadership. And I will lead, help lead with the 4 other members. Another thing that I will do is, I'm retired. I have all the time in the world. I roam around town during the day now, and I'm up at Town Hall myself where what I want to look for up there. So I appreciate it if you can consider me for one of your votes. Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Well, on April 7th this year, we will face another opportunity to select who best represents the interest of you and this town. I'm respectfully asking for your consideration and help as we continue the journey on an even better tomorrow. As I mentioned, I'm a retired lieutenant with the Massachusetts Department of Correction, and during my career, I have been recognized and honored with several distinguished awards, basically for outstanding performance and community service. Although individual achievement is both significant and self-rewarding, I believe the team approach and concept, it's vital and necessary to accomplish, and rightfully so. If we stand united, I think we'll be able to achieve unquestionable greatness. Well-seasoned and professionally experienced in policymaking, I have a vast knowledge in creating, writing, and following procedures and implementing practices. I bring supervisory skills and a keen ability to work in partnership with other people. I understand that strong work ethic and tireless commitment are leadership qualities that promote further success. If elected to the Board of Selectmen, I have no intentions to micromanage in any capacity. In fact, I have complete confidence and earnest respect that the people we have entrusted to and pay good salaries to, that they'll continue to perform their daily activities in the most responsible manner. However, it should be noted that I firmly believe in professional and prudent oversight. Elected leaders have no reason or should stand in the shadows. Out front and actively involved is a true makeup of effective leadership. I bring new and fresh ideas and will always make decisions in the best interest of you. I believe that sound leadership and effective direction is accomplished through an open, transparent, and receptive office. On April 7th, I'm asking for your vote and your support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. O'Regan.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you all for watching this evening. I'm asking for one of your votes to be re-elected to the Board of Selectmen because there's still work to do, and I would appreciate the opportunity to keep working. I'd like to use my minute and 3/4 now to highlight some of the things we've been working on and continue to work on. Preface that by one story from the Zoning Board of Appeals when I was first on. I asked a question in one of the hearings, and one of the people, the hearing didn't conclude, and after that meeting, somebody came up to me and asked me, you know, obviously you feel this way or that way, and I asked why they thought that, and it was because I asked a question. I ask questions because I want to know what the answers are, not because I have a predisposition. That's what I've been doing on the Board of Selectmen for 3 years. I'll continue to do it. I've been focusing on better management. Take a look at what's coming. We have, for the first time, an integrated accounting system coming online. Until this year, the town, a $100 million operation, had 2 different accounting systems. Neither one talked to each other, and much of the data from one had to be re-input into the other by hand. That's done. We now have a 5-year capital plan. That's new. 4 years ago, we didn't have one and couldn't get one out of Town Hall. We no longer see lawsuit after lawsuit filed against the town because we have a better management. Remember those days 4 and 5 years ago when we saw repeated lawsuits? That's not there. We're paying attention to deteriorated buildings, and we're creating a fund to pay for new buildings in a building reserve. We didn't have that 4 years ago. We have a street policy. We have a vehicle policy, so we're not squandering money on rundown vehicles. We've streamlined the budget process. We're building the tax base. We're working to get the downtown going. And so I'd like to ask your help to continue this work. It's not just me. It's the folks that I'm pleased to work with on the various other town boards and committees and who work for the town that can help us accomplish these things. We can do all this. We just have to tell ourselves that we can and go about finding a way to get it done.
Thank you, Mr. O'Regan. Ms. Walsh.
When you talk about fiscal responsibility, maybe a lady's not supposed to reveal this, but I live on $1,200 a month. That's my pension for working for the town for 30 years. My real estate bill, because I want to stay on the home that I've lived in for 67 years, is over 1/4 of my income. No one pinches a penny harder than Cynthia Walsh. I want to ask for your vote on September 7th. People have said to me, oh, Cynthia, you're a shoo-in. Well, I want you to put your shoes on April 7th and march down to the polls and vote for me, or I can't continue to serve you. If you don't know me personally or haven't met me, you know someone who does know me. You don't live in a place for 67 years and just hide in a hole. I've been visible. I think I'm the most visible selectman. Frequently when selectmen are invited someplace, I'm the only one that's there. You see me in every parade, in every procession. You can come up to me at the Stop and Shop, or Giovanni Salon, or the bakery on Wyman Street. I'm a pedestrian, so I'm not shopping at the Legacy Mall. I'm shopping around Stoughton. People have no fear about calling, and it's a Walsh policy. If you call, I respond. If you leave a name and a number, you'll hear from me whether you agree with me or not. Everyone gets a shot. So please, remember, Walsh. I don't even know what position I am on the board, but it's the only one with a female name. Please vote for someone on April 7th. Don't let your vote just be flushed away. Vote.
I want to thank each of you, Mr. Cohn, Mr. Brown, Mr. O'Regan, Ms. Walsh, for your presentation this evening. I want to say to our audience that I want to remind you that Election Day is on April 7th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Jeff Pickett and myself, as we did last year, we'll have a live Election Day wrap-up. And if you put on the camera so I can speak to the audience, I would love to have that. So if you would, I want to also say that if on that evening of April 7th, we will be on Comcast Channel 9 or Verizon Channel 28 starting at 8:30. So shortly after the election, the polls close. Thank you for putting the camera on me. Once we have the station, the election closed, we will be here at Town Hall. We will be having the candidates for both the winners of the election for both the school committee and for the Board of Selectmen. I also want to thank my producers, Roy Cohen and Gina Cole, Jeffrey Pickett, who is the program director, and of course a special person who joined us this evening to help out and keep the time and keep all of you in line, and me for sure, Diane Cohn, who happens to be the wife of Bob Cohn. So again, we talked a lot tonight. Certainly, hopefully that you have had an opportunity, the voting persons here in Stoughton, had an opportunity to get a sense from our 4 candidates for the Board of Selectmen as to what they think on particular issues, what they think that they want to do. Certainly, they want you to go out and vote for them, and we will definitely be able to have you there. So again, have a good night, and thank you.
And if I don't